Greetings, everyone. Just checking in. I'm just getting Susan added to this live with you. Can't wait to join you in a few moments.
I'm
Greetings,
sorry.
Susan. We are live. It is delightful to meet you here.
Nice to meet you, my friend and my sister. You look beautiful.
Thank you. You too, darling. You too. So I'm here from the Gold Coast, which is usually sunny, but we're having a bit of a tropical rain to cool down. So for all of those people who are wondering, it's already about 29 degrees where I am.
Oh my
So I know I've got a lot of people listening who also might be in colder parts of the US and UK, and they're thinking about migrating, or if you're coming from African countries, this is also the right climate for you.
awesome. uh
Amazing. So I'll kick off by I'll introduce myself. I'm Rhea Fawole, and I'm the CEO and principal lawyer for an Australian immigration law firm called Solvi Migration. And I actually worked in the Australian Immigration Department for 12 years in many roles, including in the Immigration Minister's office and in the legal team training visa decision makers. So that's kind of why I decided to take those skills and help people migrate, because Australia's migration can be quite complicated, but in my humble opinion, quite worthwhile. And I'm delighted that you asked me to come and speak to your audience who might be interested in migrating.
yes. And my name is Susan Okwonkwo. I'm a registered nurse practicing here in the United States. Houston to be precise. So I keep getting questioned about how to migrate to US and Australia and other places. And I know you are an expert on this field. You're gonna be answering our questions, in a way that I don't just want to give information because that is not my specialty. So that is why I am inviting you so that you will give us an expert advice and so that we won't go about making mistakes. So everyone, I know that you
Fantastic.
guys are here. So we're gonna kick off with the question. So if you have any question, drop it on the comment section. I'm gonna be putting your question across to her so that everybody will be on the same page and your question will be answered accordingly. So without talking so much, tell us, who are your target audience?
Mhm. Look, in terms of my background, it's really anyone who's interested in migrating to Australia. I do have my firm does deal with a lot of registered nurses, though, so that's kind of one of our specializations, and also other medical professionals. But as I'm someone who train visa decision makers, I can actually assist people with any type of migration that's available. So a lot of people don't realize how complicated the migration can be because they'll try and do their own research, which is the right thing to do. But there's actually about 140 different visa subclasses in Australia, and some of those have multiple streams. And so it can be quite confusing to know, with your skills and background, which particular pathways are available to you.
So you can also help people that are not in the medical field at all.
Yes, that's correct. So we do have a variety of clients, some even farmers here in
Oh,
Australia, international
wow.
students as well, some family visas. But I would say most of our clients are migrating with their skills. And some of them later on might come back to us because they may have parents that they're trying to assist with migrate, or other family members. So it grows from there.
Hmm. So let's start from the nurses because I am a nurse and I know a lot of nurses are watching right now. So I'm gonna start
Let's do
with them,
this.
then we'll go about. So what are the requirements to come to Australia as a nurse?
Mhm. So the very first thing you need to do is to actually be able to register as a nurse in Australia. And the health practitioners sort of regulatory body is called APRA. And APRA has a lot of different boards that it does the assessments are part of it. So the nursing board is part of APRA. So you need to be able to get a registration. It can be done through a number of ways, and it will depend on where you have done your qualifications. And when I say where, I don't just mean the country. It's
Oh,
actually even down to the institution. We can broadly look at some countries and go, okay, you may have done a Bachelor of Nursing in X country, and yes, we can look at registering you. But there's others where we need to look at the institution,
mm,
because one bachelor's in one institution, Australia may assess that as slightly differently, sometimes a bit higher, sometimes a bit lower.
mm,
And this is where other experience will come in. So for some nurses, they may need to do additional exams. And I know that you're an NCLEX coach, so that's one
yes.
of the exams that they will need to prepare for. There's also the Aussie exam.
Aussie. Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, so if they've done qualifications in one of those countries where their nursing doesn't exactly align with Australia's requirements, then those will be the additional exams.
Mm,
But if they've gone and they've done their nursing training, say in a country like the US, UK, Canada,
mm,
Ireland, New Zealand, where else do we have? Hong Kong, some parts of Pakistan, some parts of Papua New Guinea. There,
mm.
there are some universities that automatically we can recognize that we could register them directly through
Oh, they don't
APRA.
need to write
So
anklet.
yeah, so it will really
Wow.
depend on where you have done your qualification as to how we advise you what the next steps for registration. So registration, step one, it's a bit of a process, and this is why I have the firm and do this kind of end-to-end service. So we kind of assist nurses right from the beginning, getting the
Oh,
right
to
advice for the
register.
registration.
Ooh,
So
and this
my
is
team and
where
I
the
chase.
challenge is.
Yes. On your
Especially,
own, most nurses we say take 1 year to get through all
mm,
of that. It can be complicated
wonderful.
to navigate all of that. So that's the first step. The next step, there is something called the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Accreditation Council, otherwise known as ANMAC, and you need
Alma.
to have what's called a skills assessment.
Mm,
That skills assessment is just for migration purposes, validating your work experience and your qualifications and any certificates of good standing, because a number of nurses have practiced in different countries.
mm,
So that's what their role is. Once we have that skills assessment, we can look at two different parts essentially of migrating. You may be sponsored by an employer in Australia, or we have something called the General Skilled Migration
mm,
Program. And
mm,
that's where we can look with an expression of interest to get the state government or the federal government to say, yes, they've got all the skills we need, they've got the right amount of points,
mm.
and you can apply
Okay, yeah.
for a
I think
visa.
I've heard that
Mhm.
before. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, when I was
yes.
younger, like I was in my 20s, I applied for that and I was actually qualified, but I didn't see a credible immigration person that I would have used then. So that was
Mhm.
why I was scared of, falling into the bad hand. So that was why I changed my
Mm.
destination to the US because my original destination was to be Australia. And age wise, skill wise, I was, qualified. So I think I've been understand what you are trying to say.
Yes,
Thank you for that
yes.
information. Then my next question is like how long does this whole process if someone just want to start right now?
Well, that depends on a number of factors, and also whether or not you have professional assistance. Uh,
Mm,
I will. I want to, I guess, tell a cautionary tale for your audience out there about people who will try and do it themselves. I've got a few examples because,
mm,
of course, working on the other side of immigration in Australia, I have a good view for what would happen with those decisions that didn't go the way that people wanted.
mm,
I had a client consult with me who sadly she came to me after she had been refused. She'd gone
mm,
through that full process. She didn't actually understand, and it was a mistake that's, an honest mistake, but didn't understand that the evidence that was required needed to line up with the points in a way that would meet the migration requirements. And understanding that is quite technical. You can't just sort of scroll through it online.
yeah,
Uh,
it's
and
too big.
unfortunately, because of that refusal, the visa application charge, they're not, you can't review
Mm,
for the general skilled migration. So there's no review and there's no refund. So that person has now lost all of those particular application fees, and in this specific case, they've now turned 45, so she's no
Mm.
longer
That,
eligible for that particular
yeah,
pathway. So
exactly.
this is why it becomes so important. And others have listened to me talking to other people online, and they said, "Oh, I was about to do it, and now I've come to you," and they feel a lot more certain because they know, okay, I've got someone else who is going to look out and actually going to chase people and get the right information and evidence. So I would just, I guess, a bit of a cautionary tale for people who are hoping to cut corners and
Mm,
hope that they can just follow what's online.
mm,
Um, it's not a refundable process.
yeah. Oh
Mhm,
my God. Oh my God. And there's a lot out there. Someone just have to be careful. Yeah.
mhm,
Then
mhm,
my next question is, these are for people that are not nurses.
mhm. Well,
How
this
can they come to
again,
Australia?
again, so we do consultations with people from all kinds of professions, and it would
Profession.
really depend on the profession. So when I talk about occupation codes, Australia has these things called ANSCO codes. So that's an
Oh,
Australia, New Zealand type of occupation code. Each of those codes, they attribute which visas you're eligible for. So not every occupation is eligible for all visas, and in fact, some occupations may not be eligible for a visa because they're just not on a skills list of need in Australia. So
mm.
it will really depend on that particular occupation. I know one that I hear a lot, so people who might be listening to you may be asking about care assistance.
Oh,
So
okay.
care assistance is one of those ones that comes up quite a bit. There are visa pathways, but you need sponsorship under what's called a labour agreement, and there's a couple of
It's
different
care.
types of
What do you call a
labour.
carer system? Carer.
Yes, it's like a nursing support
Oh,
worker
nursing
or someone
assistant
helping with
position.
that type of,
Ooh,
yes.
yeah.
Mm,
Oh, that's
yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
So available, but it's not under the general skilled migration. So you can't be
Mm,
nominated by the state or federal government. You need to have an employer in Australia who
oh, to
agrees to
be
sponsor you
able.
for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
that's where the challenge comes.
Come.
But I am always looking out for those people, trying to see what I can find. But unfortunately, I'm not a recruitment agent, so I don't do the recruitment. I am trying what we can to trial a bit of a pilot.
Mm,
To see if we can find some relationships with care agencies, but at the
exactly.
moment there's
That's
a bit
exactly
of
what I wanted to
hesitancy.
say. Hmm.
Yeah. It can be tricky because, for that type of occupation, what a lot of people don't realize, when an employer sponsors you, there's a lot of cost for the employer. And we're
Yeah.
not talking about them paying for your visas, because most
Mm,
employers are not going to pay for your visas, your health checks, your English tests, all of those other things you're going to require. You still have the responsibility to pay those. But
oh,
employers, to sponsor someone, just to give everyone a rough idea, it's anywhere from 15,000 to $20,000 Australian just in the migration costs to them.
wow.
So people, when they're kind of like, find me a sponsor, find me a visa, find me, they need to have a bit more of a strategic plan and a bit of reality. They are going to have to make contributions and investment. There's not employers sitting there with deep
Give
buckets
you
of money
everything.
waiting to pay for everything.
Mm-mm. You have to do your part. I
That's
get. I
right.
think it's like that everywhere. Even
Hmm.
the employers that sponsor nurses and other professionals to the US, you must first have your NCLEX passed, your test
Hmm.
of English. If you are going to the state that require test of English, but you have to. They just have to meet you at the part of employment.
Yes.
So you would have just gone through all the process, then they will employ you, by hiring the best, then every other thing. So you guys will negotiate the contract and everybody will be happy. So it's not new. So anybody that's ready to take this journey must understand that they have a part to play. Because I know people have come to my DM to say, um, can you introduce me? I said, no, you just have to pay your own price. It's
Hmm.
not really
Hmm.
totally free. You have to do your part.
Yes.
Thank you for
Yes,
answering
I
that
get
question.
a lot of messages on that to me. Get me a job, get me a visa. It's like I understand the desire for moving to another country, but people need to also understand that they are going to have to put in the work. We're all, you know, there's a lot of people that's competitive out there,
Yeah.
and people are putting in the effort. Like for yourself with your own journey to migrate to the US, there
It
would have been a lot of
it
study and preparation and hard
tough.
work.
It was tough.
Mm, yes.
Okay.
Yes, so
So
I admire people who have gone through that, but that's, you know, people need to be realistic. They're going to have to put in that work as well, and it may mean, I know when I've spoken to some other nurses like Daya and Nanelle, you know, that and yourself, some
yeah.
people will migrate to a couple of countries before they get to their end destination.
Ah.
So they may need to do that. I do see a lot of people I'm speaking to have migrated, say from African countries as nurses. They go to somewhere like the US or the UK.
UK.
They get their OSCE, their NCLEX, then they're ready for
Move.
that permanent pathway. Because I can actually bring them in if they've got the right points. We could bring them in
Yeah.
with permanent residency.
Very easy. Yeah.
Hmm.
Got that.
Mm.
Thank you for answering that question. Then my question before I talk again is, does these visas cover married people and their kids? Any of these employment visas, if someone was able to do their part and get an employer or migrate as a nurse, are they gonna come with their husband and kids at the same time?
The short answer is yes. So that's really, really good news.
Mm.
The only caveats will be looking at the ages of the dependent children.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So under the age of 18, that's easy. If someone is over 18, we would need to do an assessment of their dependency. So
Mm,
they may have dependency because they're still studying. A lot of people are
mm,
still there, you know, they're at college, they're at university, they still live with their parents. Then you're still dependent and you can still be on that visa. Um, Other things to be aware of, people need to be aware that there are health and character requirements. So depending on which pathway,
mm,
you know, that we may need to navigate those types of things for people because it affects everyone in the family unit.
mm.
So, for
Oh, yeah.
example, if there is a child who may have high needs, we're
Mm,
going to need to do a bit more legal work in order
mm,
to be able to assist the full family to migrate.
mm. Awesome. That's a
Mhm.
beautiful one, because that's the challenge after you get it and you have to start waiting or looking for how to bring your family over. It can be very, very challenging
Mhm.
for family and children. But with this, I know a lot of people is gonna look into that. And my joy is that because you're not doing just for nurses. So I know my audience that are not nurses, I know they are happy to, hear that there's also
Mhm.
opportunity for others. And that's very, very incredible. I love that. Then finally, can you give us like amounts, the cost of just an idea what someone should be getting ready in terms of
Mhm.
budget?
Look, Look, in terms of budgeting, I mean, it is a big investment, but we're talking about getting to another country. And this is often why some people will take a few steps with their migration so that they can get their funds ready.
Yeah.
There's going to be a number of different costs. This is why it's like I can't just say to someone, it costs X amount of dollars. The first thing is, get a paid legal consultation and find out what pathway you're eligible
Oh,
for.
cool, cool, cool.
Because, like I was saying before, it's not just I have a degree from X country. I need to. Oh, I've just lost you, Susan. I will continue though. It's not just about having a degree from X country. We actually need to assess the specific qualification and the institution that you did that qualification. So really important that people understand that it will take a bit more assessment in order to see whether or not it equates with Australia's requirements. Then once you've had that, you've actually got a clear legal plan, we know also what visas you're going to be eligible for. I'm just going to bring Susan back into the studio. There
Yeah.
we go. We got you back.
Yeah.
So I was just still talking to everyone and explaining about the importance of that consultation so we can get
Yeah.
a clear plan. Super important that we need to assess your qualifications. We need to assess your work experience
Yeah.
because it will not just be, I did X qualification. We need to assess the institution and other things. So I have this professional tool with Australia's Department of Education, and it looks at every single education institution across the world to see if you did this particular course in this, what does it equate for the Australian standards? And I know for some clients, I've done a consultation and their bachelor degree that they did in their country is actually only the equivalent of a certificate for in something similar in Australia. Or conversely, it was slightly higher. It was a high bachelor. So we always need to assess the specific institution and the qualification. Then we need to look at the years of work experience to see whether or not it meets the requirements and what visas you're eligible for. Once we know what visas you're eligible for, then we can start talking about, okay, do you need to do fresh English tests? Do you need higher English scores? What registrations are you going to need? If you need a skills assessment. So most occupations, you will need to have your skills assessed. And Australia has 42 different skills assessing authorities. So for nurses, it's the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Accreditation Council, so ANMAC. But there's different skills assessing authorities depending on your profession. So for example, right now I've got, there's an ICT business analyst we're working with. So the Australian Computer Society will assess their qualifications. There's an engineer, so we've got Engineers Australia for them. Other trades and other professions, it might be vet assess. There's so many different assessing authorities, so we really need to look at the profession
So
that
when
you're
you look
working
at the
in.
profession, they will know if it's equivalent or they need to do additional course or test of English.
That's right.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so good. So apparently, if all these are apart, it's easy. The next thing is to get your money and start processing. Because
That's
I know some
right.
countries, coming like the US. I know a lot of people from Africa. It's hard for them to fit into the system with their degrees because sometimes they don't accept that.
Mhm.
So a lot of them tend to change profession, go into nursing or IT. Sometimes they are not really happy because that is not who they are, you know. But
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But as far as Australia is concerned, there are opportunity for your certificate from your original country, and if there's additional information or test is needed, you have to do it and still practice it in your field of knowledge. And I love that.
Mhm.
That's
Yes.
so good to know. That's so good.
Mm. I
Wow.
know for some people it can be a bit of a challenge. Now, I'm just looking at some of the questions that we've got there. I can see
Oh,
their best has asked about automobile engineering.
oh, good.
So
Please,
that's
can you take their questions so that they will be happy?
yeah, absolutely. So, Beth, thank you so much for asking about that. The good news is automobile engineering is actually on the skilled list in Australia. But again, as I was just discussing with Susan, the important thing is actually looking at whether your work experience and qualifications will meet the same Australian standards. So that would be what the legal consultation would be in order to assess that. And we may need to advise for some clients that they need to do further studies, as we were saying. But it's certainly something that is available in Australia, and it is a skilled pathway for migration.
Wonderful. Okay.
Mhm.
Any other question? Did anybody ask?
I'm having a look down the on our questions there. That's the only one that I can see. Everyone else is there's some greetings.
Okay.
That
Okay,
we
let
have
me
got
see.
that, and thank you.
Let me go to the
Citadel,
chat.
thank you for your greetings. Appreciate that.
Hi, thank you for joining us. You can't do this if you're not there. Okay, let me see if I can see any of their comments. I can't see it on my part.
It's just been there. I can see, Citadel, you've asked about the healthcare assistant. So this was this pathway that I talked to Susan earlier
if you can
before.
say it again so that they can understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are pathways, but the tricky thing is that you will need to actually find an employer to sponsor you. So you will need to meet certain English requirements. And when I talk about English requirements, they're occupation specific. So Australia actually has a higher IELTS equivalent, or the OET or PTE for nursing. So for all for health practitioners, it's 7.0, but not the average, 7.0 in every single area.
In all the bands? Oh.
All bands, yeah. That's a B in OET. So that's sort of covering your medical professionals. For a healthcare assistant, though, it sits at around 5.5. This may change, though. This is the other thing people need to be aware of. Governments review and change their laws quite regularly, particularly in the migration field. And in 2024, we're heading into an election in Australia. So immigration always will experience fluctuation of changes in that period. So just again, a good idea to have a legal professional, such as, Solving Migration is in Australian immigration law firm. Some people will use migration agents to get that advice. And I'll just before going on to explain a bit more about healthcare assistance, I'll explain to listeners the difference, because I have some people who'll say to me, Maria, you don't have a MARA number. When they're talking about MARA, it's the Migration Agents Registration Authority. That's for registered migration agents. So someone who is a registered migration agent is someone who is they're Australian, or they have citizenship here. They've done a bachelor's degree of some kind. Then they've gone on and done a graduate diploma in Australian migration law and practice. And then they have to sit what's called a capstone exam, and they register with that authority. In my situation, I'm a lawyer. So I'm a solicitor, which means for someone to be a lawyer in Australia, you need to have either done a Bachelor of Laws, or in my case, I did a Juris Doctor, because I did a Bachelor of Business, then I went on and did a Juris Doctor. Then you do your graduate diploma in legal practice, then you have to do your practical legal hours. Then I was admitted to the bar. So I can go in a court and represent clients. So that would be, at a high level, the differences. In terms of representation, as a lawyer, I can have legal client privilege.
That's what I'm
as a
saying.
Migration agent,
this is
you
a
can't.
double blessing on you, because you are handling both parts. You have to hire lawyer differently. Oh my God,
So that's the kind of differences, and the differences in registration. So my registration is with the Law Society. So my immigration law firm is registered under the Queensland Law Society. So each state in Australia has a law society. So that's what an immigration lawyer. So when people want to check that they've got someone who's qualified, they need to go to MARA if they're a migration agent, or they need to look at the relevant law society. So you can look at the Queensland Law Society directory and see Rhea Fawole has a principal practicing certificate. So that's how you can check that someone is genuine, which is good. Check. So just to go back to Citadel's question about
protect any other question, I protect my reputation. I cannot just bring someone. So I know I can beat my chest. I can beat
you have the real deal. You can look me up.
I have the real deal. That's the right word. Thank you so much for that explanation. Any other questions?
So just coming back to Citadel, just to repeat with healthcare assistance. So healthcare assistance, there is a migration pathway.
Mhm.
There's three different types of occupation codes. So it's around being a support worker or a carer or a nursing assistant. There's two
Mm.
different skills assessing authorities. The English requirements are slightly lower than for someone, say, who is a nurse or a doctor or so on, for the IELTS. You need to have done the equivalent of an Australian Certificate 3 or have had 12 months of full-time work experience that can be validated. But
Yeah.
you have to be sponsored by an employer. So you need to find uh, an Australian employer who is prepared to sponsor you for that particular work. So
Mm.
they would need to have authority, have been approved by Australia's Department of Home Affairs to sponsor, and
Yeah.
then they can sponsor you for a visa. But again, people be aware, being employer sponsored does not always mean that the employer will pay for all of your costs. So
No,
I just want
everybody knows.
to make that
Everybody know
clear.
that is a no. Because they are the one
um,
doing the biggest, part of the job. If you have all those things and you don't have
yes.
anybody to bring you, your, you know, exams will expire. I know that test of English they expire sometime. So, like before I came here, I
Mhm.
did some, and within 2 years it's expired. So, if you get all that and you see an employer that's ready to bring you in, that's a good opportunity because it has saved you a lot of
Mhm.
struggle. Just
Yeah,
pack your bag,
absolutely.
do your part, and let's go. That's just it. Hmm.
I'm just seeing a few more questions there. I've got one there from Jennifer asking about Australia's IELTS and how
Okay.
long it's valid for.
Okay.
So usually it's valid for 3 years, Jennifer, for
Oh,
the
okay.
IELTS.
Hmm.
But as a lawyer, what we always do as we're getting closer to filing, we're always checking the dates on the documents because that's really crucial. With
Crucial.
the migration regulations, they have uh, two different things. One's called a time of application, one's a time of decision.
Mm.
A time of application requirement is your English level. So we need to
Oh.
make sure that you provide a valid one that hadn't expired
Mm.
because otherwise the application will be refused and we don't want to lose your fees. So that's something to be
Yeah.
aware of.
Wonderful.
Um, and I can see who we got here. Damilola
Okay.
has asked about the working holiday visa. So WHV is working holiday visa.
Oh, awesome.
UK trained registered nurse and wanted to know if working with one employer for up to 6 months still applies after July 2024? Good. That's a really good question. So this is working holiday visas. So people are aware they're available for people with certain passports. The UK is one of
Mm.
those. So it's not available
Those.
for every single passport.
Oh,
So with
is
this
it applicable
particular
for people?
question,
Mhm.
Uh, so there's no African countries
Oh,
that
okay.
are eligible for a working holiday visa. Um, there and there's actually two different types, but for the UK, this particular question, I know why Damilola is asking about that. Australia has a bilateral agreement that's
With
coming into
UK.
effect with the UK that
UK.
actually gives them longer time on those working holiday visas.
Mm.
So yes, that will be possible. So you're saying you're a UK trained RN. It will
Mm.
depend on your passport. If
Mm.
you'd need to have that UK passport as well, and you would need to still register with APRA in Australia in order to be able to come
Able
in
to
on the working holiday and work as a nurse in Australia.
Australia
But
during the
yes, you will
public.
be able to work for longer than the 6 months
Mm.
after July. So good research that you're doing there.
Research. Awesome. Thank you.
I
Wow.
can see
I
one. Citadel has popped up again with a question about how I get an employer. Well,
Woo.
that's a very good question. Look, Australia's got a number of different sites. One of the sites that you can look at is called Work in Oz. And I'm just going to give them a little shout out. They're a lovely group, so I'm just popping that into the chat there. So
Thank you
Working
so
Oz
much.
is
Mm-hmm.
actually set up by a former immigration lawyer. So employers who are willing to sponsor can post their jobs on there.
On
So
there.
that's a platform that you can look to. I would caution people. I hear a lot. People will come to me and say, "I paid a recruitment agent in my home country."
No.
Uh, that that can, maybe they're genuine, but for most practice, it's unusual. So in Australia, as someone who is the prospective employee,
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't be paying the recruitment agent because the employer is paying the
It's already
recruitment agent to
exactly.
find workers. So just be careful.
Careful.
And I would also be careful that you're still getting your own professional legal advice. Don't just hand over your migration to an employer, because even if they have a lawyer or agent, the lawyer or agent is acting for them as the employer, not for
Yeah, so they
you
are
as the
working,
visa applicant.
they're on the same page, so you have to be smart also. So,
Yes,
to check
yes.
out the, whatever you are signing into. Yeah.
Very, very important.
Mm.
Mhm. Now, Citadel, you're saying you really need help to get started. The best thing I can say is to book a consultation.
Yes,
So I will pop in the chat there for everyone the
please.
our
How
website,
to
and
how
you
to
can
reach
just
you.
easily click on that and you can
Mm.
book a consultation
Consultation.
from there. We've got a nice online link, and you can book that with myself or with one of the other qualified immigration lawyers.
Yes. That's so wonderful. Wow, wow, wow. I'm learning a lot because don't worry, I'm gonna visit in Australia. You will see me maybe on holiday, maybe on holiday working visa just to see how everywhere looks, That would be so
Fantastic.
so good.
Yeah.
So be expecting me. I'm gonna contact you for my own personal.
Excellent, excellent. I look forward to it. That will be great. Yeah, I
Yes.
think it's wonderful if people can at least try and come and have a visit, see what they think. Australia
Yeah.
is also very diverse. It's very
Yeah.
large, just
Mm.
like, the US is very
US
large.
large. Mm.
People don't necessarily realize how large. I know I've got family from Nigeria, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll come and have a visit, and let's go to see Uluru and then the Great Barrier Reef, and then we want to see Sydney Harbour." And I'm like, "Okay, so we're flying?" And they're like, "Oh, that sounds expensive." I was like, "Okay, so what you're talking about would probably take about 10 days to drive from one point to the other point now."
Yeah, just like the US.
It's
Texas
a
alone
very
is
nice.
like a country, It's
Yes,
so
yes,
big.
it is huge. And that means that we actually have very different climates and
At the
different types
same
of
time.
flora and
Yeah, just
fauna,
like the US.
depending on where
Yeah.
you are.
Like
Hmm.
Texas is like African climate, unlike Maryland
Hmm.
or New York is they are very, very they can't dress just the way I'm dressing right now. It's not possible. But wow. Wonderful.
I can see another question has popped up there from Jennifer. It says it's 6 months now that she made an application to be registered via New Zealand.
Mm,
Um, so this, Jennifer, it sounds to me like potentially if you're registering via New Zealand, unless you're planning on practicing there, you potentially don't have a UK passport.
mm,
So if you don't have that UK passport, you may not have a passport that's eligible for a working holiday visa, because not every single country is eligible for working holidays in Australia.
mhm,
The
mhm,
way that working holiday visas come about, so yes, they're for young people, generally from 18 to 30.
mhm.
Some we have up to the age of 35.
Yeah.
But it's actually a bilateral agreement that Australia will have with that country.
Mm,
And there's some countries where there's no limit to how many of those visas are granted, and that's called the subclass 417. Then there's also the subclass 462, which is different countries, and they have a cap for how many of those visas they would give each year. But again, not every single country is eligible for either of those. So
okay.
important to understand that. In terms of your processing time, Jennifer, that is quite long.
Wow.
And what I would say is this is why we sort of help nurses from start to end, because it can be very confusing and complicated. You would need to have your documents all verified by the CGNFS.
Yeah,
And
yeah, very
they're
important.
a US company, but they operate separately from verifying documents in New Zealand. Totally different portal, in fact.
Mm,
So people get quite confused with those processes, and it's not their job to chase you and tell you what to do.
mm. Wow, wow. Knowledge is
Yes,
power. Knowledge
that's
is
right.
power. I'm telling you. Anyway, I think we have to call it a day. We'll come back. I'm gonna take
Yes.
questions from them, then drop your contact. Anyone that is trying to reach out to you through me, I will also shoot you an email so that
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's been really nice just to chat with you and chat with people about coming to Australia. And yeah, I love it when people actually start to get a bit of an idea and get a bit excited and start to understand what's going to be the actual process and work they need to put into place in order to migrate successfully.
exactly. I know it's super early where you are. I don't want to keep you so long so that you can enjoy your Sunday. It's nice
Yes.
speaking and being on this live chat with you, Rhea. And I hope we'll do this again, okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I want
Many
to
blessings,
appreciate
everyone.
everyone that join us. I am super happy that you made it. Sorry for the technical error that happened, but I know you got some very good information even in the little time we spent together. Thank you very much. Do you have anything to say, Reha, before we sign?
Oh, look, I'm just it's lovely to reach out and speak to so many people in this way. So I actually enjoy doing these, even if I have to get up early.
Wow, that's good. That's good.
It means
I'm
that people are getting the right information, and then they
very
can come and check with us to find out about their own specific situation, what they should be doing.
be doing awesome,
Hmm.
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure having you.
Thank you
Thank you
very
for
much,
your
and
time.
we look forward to you coming and seeing Australia.
Yes, I'm serious. I'm serious.
That would be amazing.
I'm gonna because I cannot just live here all my life. I need to explore and see what's going on in other places.
That's right. That's right. We're here and we're waiting for you.
Thank you very much. Take care
All
and
right.
have a good
Thank you.
Sunday. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.